All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing solving equations. I love equations. This is the start of the journey for you that goes on for a number of years in your schooling, and it's exciting because when you sit there, when you get into the heart of maths, and it might take you half to three quarters of a page to solve an equation, it is very satisfying once you get that equation out and you can understand and solve the problem that you're trying to do. And it's awesome. So it's a great journey. So we're just going to start easily. You may have seen these before, you may not have. So I'm just going to go through. You may have a different way of doing it. I want you to write these down in your book. This is very important that these steps are followed. Because once they get harder, if you're still following and the questions are being asked in your head, it just becomes so easy. Okay, so they should be these steps that I'm going to give you. I think there's 6 steps need to be followed every single time. Okay, and just to keep that, think of an equation like a set of scales, and they need to be balanced. If you add something to this side, you need to add to that side. Otherwise, they're going to be imbalanced. Okay, so it's very important that you do that. You in your head, you're going, if I do this to one side, I have to do it to the other side. Okay. The first thing is, if the equation has fractions, you need to multiply all terms by the lowest common denominator. We're not going to get up to those yet, but that's the first thing. Normally, we don't like fractions in there. They'll challenge us a bit too much, so let's get rid of them, okay? We're not doing those for a few more lessons, but let's just have that in our list, okay? The next one is, if there's a variable on both sides, we need to remove the lowest one, okay? And we'll get into that, I think, probably next lesson. The next one is, what is furthest away from and these steps 3 to 6 are every single time. They just mean to be going over in your head. And so if you need help in class, these are the questions I'm going to be asking you when I come over. What's furthest away from the variable on the same side as the variable? What's it doing to that variable? Do the opposite to both sides and then repeat it, okay? So if I look at this example, and when I say what's it doing, is it adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, okay? The opposite of adding is subtracting. The opposite of subtracting is adding. The opposite of multiplying is divide. The opposite of divide is multiply. Okay, so you've got to know those things, those relationships between the two of them. Okay, so the first thing I need to know is what's furthest away from the variable, which is the x. What's furthest away from it on the same side as it. Okay, and it's the 7. What's it doing? It's adding 7. So what's the opposite of adding 7? I'm gonna subtract 7, and I'm going to do it to both sides, and then I'm going to rule a line. Okay, this goes back to what we do when we're in primary school, and we line up the units column and the tens column and all those sort of things. And now I say, okay, on the right hand side I've got 9. I take 7 away. What have I got? I've got 2. Okay, my equal sign is still there. I've got a 7. I take 7 away, and I've got nothing left. That was the objective of doing that, okay? So I've just got my x on that side, and x is equal to 2, which is kind of, you would have been able to look at that, and there's lots of different ways to do it. But if you think about this process, it becomes easier later on, all right? Moving on to number 2, what's furthest away from the a on the same side as the a? It's a 3. What's it doing? It's subtracting. So I need to add 3. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to both sides, okay? I'm going to add up what's on the right-hand side of the equal sign. I've got 9, I add 3 to it, I've got 12, and I've got my A, okay? Next one, what's furthest away from that x? That 8 is. It's kind of like the 2 is attached to it, so I need to think about what is furthest away physically, okay? So the 8 is at the moment, what's it doing? Is it adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing? It's adding 8, so what's the opposite? I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. I want to draw my line. Very important, just to visually at the start. You don't have to do this forever, but if you're nailing these absolutely every time, then you can sort of skip a few steps. But until you're awesome at them, just do these steps, okay? I've got 14, I take 8 away, I've got 6. What have I got left on the left-hand side? I've got a 2x. So now what's furthest away from that x? It's a 2. What's it doing? It's multiplying by 2. What's the opposite of multiply? And it's divide. So I'm going to create a fraction there by divide, because that's what divide means. Those 2's are going to cancel out, which was my objective. And so I'm left with x on the left-hand side, and 6 divided by 3 is going to get, 6 divided by 2 is going to get me 3. I was jumping through to the answer. All right, so the next one, what's furthest away, and this is a bit of a trick one I threw in here. What's furthest away from the x on the same side as the x? It's the 6. What's it doing? And I spoke about this one other video, is it's adding, because I have that positive in the front. That numbers don't care about what's behind them. The 6 doesn't care that there's the negative there. It means nothing to it, really. It's isolated with that positive out the front. So what's the opposite of positive 6? It's negative 6. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to both sides. Okay? So what have I got left on the right-hand side? I've got 4 there. What's left on my left-hand side? I've got negative 3x. Now I say, what's furthest away from that x on the same side as the x? To negative 3. What's it doing? It's multiplying. So I've got to do the opposite of multiply by negative 3, which is divide by negative 3. So I'm going to divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. Those negative 3's will cancel each other out, and I'm just left with an x. And what I've got left on this side, sometimes we're just going to be left with mixed fractions, improper fractions. I don't want you to necessarily write 4 and 1/3 there. We're in high school now. I'm happy for you to write negative 4 on 3, okay? I don't necessarily love the negative in the denominator for whatever reason. Just put it out the front or in the top. A thing to note about MathSpace is MathSpace will want you to write it as the negative and then put the number in, like, 4 on 3, okay? Although, having said that, sometimes it does want that negative up there. There is a bit of a problem with the algorithm when it's correcting it. So if that comes up in the number, then your question, you're confident that it's right, and it's coming up as, I think it's a green one. It's not saying it's wrong. It's saying just change the format of it. That's what it's meaning. Just put the negative out the front, as opposed to with the number on the numerator. Okay? So I hope that helps, and I will see you on the next video.